Good morning and welcome back. I'm Michael George in for Errol Barnett. We're taking a live look at Capitol Hill this morning as the midterm races narrow. And that's where we began our top stories this Wednesday. South Carolina's Republican special primary to replace late Senator Lindsey Graham heads to a runoff. CBS News projects his sister, Senator Darlene Graham, will face Congressman Ralph Norman. That vote will be held in 2 weeks. And CBS News projects progressive Peggy Flanagan will be the Democratic nominee for U.S. Senate from Minnesota. She beat centrist candidate Congresswoman Angie Craig. Flanagan now faces Republican and former sports broadcaster Michelle Tafoya in November. And an upset in Connecticut. 14-term Congressman John Larson lost his party's primary. CBS News projects former Hartford Mayor Luke Bronin will advance to the general election. Bronin campaigned on being a newer, younger face to represent Connecticut's 1st District. And in Wisconsin, a nail-biting test of progressive policies ends in a victory for the moderate arm of the party. David Crowley is the projected Democratic nominee for governor. He narrowly defeated Democratic Socialist Francesca Hong. Now, this was Crowley after voting yesterday.
We all need to come to the table. Our goal as Democrats is to make sure that we don't have a Republican replacing Governor Evers. And if that was to happen, we know the progress that he has made, that we've made in this state, it would be rolled back.
And for more on this race, we're joined by Taurean Small, who's in Madison, Wisconsin. Taurean, good morning. I want to talk about Crowley. At one point, he suspended his campaign, but now he's going to be the Democratic nominee for governor. So what happened in this race?
Yeah, Michael, that was one of the most chaotic 10-day periods for a candidate in this race. This Democratic primary has seen quite a bit of shakeups, including the late dropouts of Lieutenant Governor and former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. That's ultimately the reason why Crowley decided to re-enter the race, saying that he now saw a pathway to winning. And also it helped that the current sitting governor, Tony Evers, also lended his endorsement at the 11th hour, which could have been what caused many voters who were on the fence, undecided up until yesterday, to ultimately decide to back Crowley in this one. I got to point out a statement from his team this morning. They said at this point, their goal is focused on ensuring that they could defeat Tom Tiffany, painting him as far too extreme for Wisconsin and saying that he is more closely aligned with President Trump. And he hopes to build out on that broad big tent coalition in the hopes of winning securely in November. I was at Crowley's pre-Get Out the Vote event on Monday in Milwaukee, and I asked him about his then closest competitor, Francesca Hong, Democratic Socialist, why he's refused to go after her and give himself distance, despite the fact Republicans have been painting those two as closely mirrored. And he said the reason why is because he wants to ensure that he builds the broadest coalition possible in order to set himself up for success in November. As we switch to the general election, Representative Tiffany will make the case that Democrats are far too liberal for Wisconsin. He's received quite a bit of backing and support from national Republicans. He's also seen millions of dollars invested in this race from the Republican Governors Association. And just recently, former Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin was out here campaigning for him as well, Michael.
All right, Taurean Small, thank you. We've got a lot to talk about, so we're going to bring in Alex Vogel and Hyma Moore now. Alex is a political strategist who served as deputy counsel for the RNC. He's also the CEO of the Vogel Group. Hyma formerly served as the director for the office of the DNC chair, and he's now a principal for Cornerstone Public Affairs. Both of you, good morning. Hyma, let's start with you. Wisconsin, very tight race, as we've been talking about. The defeat of Democratic Socialist Francesca Hong. Did Democrats just let out a sigh of relief that Crowley won instead? And is this a setback for progressives?
Hey, Michael, good to see you and good to be with you this morning. Look, I think regardless of where Francesca Hong stood on the ideological spectrum, she was just not a good candidate. So I think Democrats have a sigh of relief because Mr. Crowley is just a better candidate than she would be. And so I think they are excited about the prospect of this very marquee battleground gubernatorial race that's going to happen in the fall. I don't think this is a setback for progressives. Look, we've said this a lot, Michael. The Democratic Party right now in particular is a big tent party. And what we saw last night is Democrats of all ilk are winning elections across the country, and it's very specific to what that state or that district needs.
Well, Alex, does Crowley on the ticket pose a bigger threat for Tom Tiffany in November?
No, I think regardless of who won that race, Republicans have a real opportunity to talk about some pretty crazy ideas coming from the other side. Look, we apparently came within 0.4% of having a governor who wanted to cancel Thanksgiving. So we determined, even on the progressive left, where the crazy line is. I do think, look, win or lose, she's going to be emblematic and quite famous around the country as people work to remind people that, hey, that's what these candidates actually believe. This wasn't some sort of blowout against her. The fact that she tanked completely at the very end, when even some of her progressive friends wouldn't come in, she was within 3,000 votes of winning. So I think that sets up a very tough dynamic for Democrats around the country.
Let's talk about Minnesota now. Progressive Peggy Flanagan won her primary. And again, Wisconsin was so close to advancing a Democratic socialist, and a common message in both of these campaigns was people over money. Here's Flanagan last night.
The many are going to beat the money one more time. Because I've seen how powerful we are when we stand up and fight for each other.
So, Hyma, is this a wake-up call for Democrat leadership that these left-wing policies can actually win in the Midwest?
Look, I think one thing that we're missing, Michael, is the voters themselves. And it's not just the candidates like Francesca Hong who are doing well. Voters want something different. They want something new. They want Democrats to have ideas. They want Democrats to be bold. They don't want Democrats just to fight Donald Trump and the status quo. And so I think we're seeing that. But look, I know Peggy Flanagan, and she's not just a progressive candidate. She's someone who has been a stalwart in fighting in Minnesota since she's been lieutenant governor and before that. And so she is much broader than just some Democratic, progressive, monolithic person. And so she's going to show that. On top of that, she's going to have someone like Amy Klobuchar who's able to bring other voters into the ticket. And Amy Klobuchar will remind you, anytime she's on the ballot, the entire ticket wins. And so I'm not really worried about that. What I'm worried about is voters seeing Peggy Flanagan and other Abdul Saeed see them as whole persons, not just progressive monoliths.
Well, Alex, last night was another blow to President Trump's endorsement record. Mike Lindell lost in Minnesota, and in South Carolina, Darlene Graham is going to a runoff. So does the president's support still have the impact with Republicans that it used to?
Yeah, I think it does. Couple of things on that. Number one, while South Carolina went to a runoff, Lindsey Graham's sister still came out ahead in that race by a meaningful margin, and I think is widely favored to be successful in the runoff. And Mike Lindell, I don't know if I'd hang that one on President Trump. I think one of the dynamics we've seen when candidates are relatively unknown, a Trump endorsement is incredibly powerful. I mean, virtually a lock. In Mike Lindell's case, Americans knew a lot about him directly from him, and I don't think President Trump's endorsement was going to ultimately change that dynamic.
All right, Alex and Hyma, thank you.